Welcome to the CEO's Guide to Marketing. I'm Seth Matlins. I've spent my career in marketing, both in and advising the C-suite, and I'm now the managing director of the Forbes CMO network. So there's data showing that if I were taller, I'd have a much better shot at becoming CEO of a major company, which makes me wonder how different things might be if my mom hadn't been 5'2". But maybe more relevantly, there's also data showing that if I were the CEO of a major company, I'd be one of only 10%, just 10% with any marketing background whatsoever. Fully 90% of the CEOs of the world's largest companies have none, which makes me wonder how much more stakeholder value could be created and enterprise growth driven if more did, if more understood how marketing works, how it doesn't, what to expect and what not to, and on what timeline. But because they don't have the experience and often don't understand, despite sometimes thinking they do, too often today's CEO and CFOs are suboptimal stewards of the resources given to CMOs in order to drive sustainable, profitable growth. Obviously, this serves no one and no company, but it does create the opportunity and obligation to increase the C-suite's marketing literacy, which brings me to this podcast in service of creating more growth and stakeholder value. Through a series of candid and connected conversations, we're hoping to raise the C-suite's marketing IQ and ensure CMOs are best positioned to do their jobs, which is to create and capture the demand that drives growth and value. With that, let's get into it. Among the things CEOs, CFOs, and other C-suite executives without marketing experience tend not to understand is the relationship between what Les Binet and Peter Field have termed the long and short of it, and how what businesses do to drive one does to affect the other, whether for good or ill. So today I'm talking with Joe Marchese. Joe's a serial entrepreneur and media executive. He's the co-founder and general partner at both Human Ventures and Casa Comos Brands Group, where he serves as co-CEO as well. He also leads Human.ai, the venture's dedicated studio exploring the potential for AI to reshape the attention economy. Joe was previously president of advertising revenue for Fox Networks Group, overseeing billions in annual advertising revenue for Fox Broadcast, FX, Nat Geo, and Fox Sports, and including tentpole events such as the Super Bowl and the World Series. Among other accolades, Joe was inducted into the Ad Hall of Achievement in 2016, and he's currently on the boards of Clear Channel Outdoor, Cox Media Group, National Cinemedia, amongst others. I wanted to talk with Joe not just because he's a widely recognized leader in the media and technology industries, but because of his CEO experience and deep understanding of marketing and the attention economy. Let's get into it. So one of the sections that we do every time we talk to anybody on the CEO's Guide to Marketing is we start with the same 10 questions, and everybody's got to answer them in 5 minutes. And yet we're going to have you on the clock, and we're going to cane you off if you go long. But the reason we do this is because I think it's fascinating to hear how different brilliant people, or how differently brilliant people, answer the same question. Where are there commonalities? Where are there distinctions? Where are there nuances? So you ready?
Yep, let's do it.
You feel pressure?
I do.
Good. That's what I want. All right, fill in the blank. Marketing is?
Informational storytelling.
Informational storytelling. All right. What then is a brand?
Shared story. A shared story about a person, place, or thing in culture.
Say more about that. So if let's use Comos, for example, I'll give you a little plug. What is that a shared story about?
Quality of the product. It is, the idea for a brand is that two people in society who might not know each other but have a shared narrative about it, right? So religion is a brand, right?
No, it's a category.
Yeah, but the mythos, a particular religion is a brand, right? And so this idea that two people will share a story about a thing, like, makes a brand, right? It can be good or bad.
Right, makes or breaks a brand, which actually we'll get to in a second.
Okay.
Knowing you've not been a CMO, but that you have worked with more than a few, what, from your perspective, is, if you had to boil it down, what's the single hardest thing about being a CMO today?
Well, this is easy in that everyone has an opinion on marketing. Like everyone thinks that they could do it easier. Everyone's like, oh, well, we'll just make the logo bigger, or why don't you just put the
That'll do it.
why don't you just put the data in the ads more often, or why don't you just tell? And then media buying, all of it. Like, oh, well, we should just buy this media, or I'm told that this can all be measured. And
My 12-year-old didn't like
the
spot created for a 40-year-old.
Exactly right.
Yeah, everybody has an opinion on it. All right, well, you have been a chief executive more than once, and you also work with a lot of chief executives. What then, from your perspective, is the hardest part of being a chief executive today?
That the chief executive still answers to someone, unless you're a family-run business or have those magic shareholder rights. And you're normally answering to shareholders or a board, and the shareholders of the board also listen to the chief financial officer. So to be a CEO that is a good manager of a CMO, you have to understand how to balance your responsibilities to CFO and shareholders. And the CFO is looking at marketing as a cost center.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably get into this later, but let's digress now. I won't count it against your
I was about to say, is this going against my 5 minutes? Because
why do you think that marketing is still seen oftentimes, if not all the time, certainly, as an expense rather than an investment? How is that not understood?
It's almost funny. It's like when things were less sophisticated. I remember going to grad school, I dropped out of almost 20 years ago now. And, there was this brand love on a balance sheet line, right? And it was almost when it was less sophisticated, people understood, there's a value to our brand, and that's why we invest in it, right? Brand marketing is an investment. But I do think that as we move marketing to more ROI-based performance marketing, well, now it's a cost center unless it drives a sale, right?
Yeah.
And so that the math is pretty simple. Like, did I sell more now than last year? Would I have sold more or less without the marketing? And they're not actually attributing that to some line that there's long-term value.
Yeah, which is all right, we're just going to stick with the digression for a second, which is, you're absolutely right. It's perceived as a cost center unless it drives a sale. And going back to your point about everybody having an opinion, it's perceived that way oftentimes because the CEO, CFO, is thinking about the immediate sale today, not the longer term sale tomorrow. They're not thinking about incrementality. They're thinking about absolutes. Oftentimes measuring long-term strategies by short-term results. And you and I were talking before we started recording, which is giving no credence to the role that brand plays in driving that sale. I was talking to a CMO last week of a big tech-driven, product-driven enterprise, and great performance marketer. But he said to me that they had they had captured all the demand they had, and so they needed to start spending on brand to create more demand. CFO said, why are you spending on brand? And I was like, I think the answer to that is I'm not. I'm spending on sales.
Right, yeah. Well, and I think the other part you just referenced, which is on what time horizon.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these people won't be in the same job 3 years or 5 years or 10 years from now. And so people who can take the long view, and I know we're going to get to this too, but I just can't help it. It's like people who take the long view can buy culture on sale right now, right? It is cheaper than it's ever been.
All right, I'm stick a pin in that.
Let's go back to that.
Because we are absolutely going to get to it.
Right.
All right, so from your perspective and experience, speaking broadly, brands and businesses grow when?
The shared narrative is stronger and good and positive.
And stronger than its competitive set?
Yes, or stronger as a bond amongst people. Like I know what the Samsung phone means. I know what the Apple phone means. I know what a Rolex watch means amongst the set of people who are the buyers, but also amongst the set of people who are the friends of the buyers and the lovers of the buyers and the mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and sons and daughters of the buyers, right? So this shared narrative.
And increasingly, and I don't say it flippantly, the social followers of the buyers.
Yeah. Well, you get friends and colleagues, right? I mean, I would say that we're very quickly getting to a place where we have no social followers because there are no social networks. There's only social media and entertainment for the most part. I mean, Snap would say that they argued that they're more for friends, and I would agree with that, although I'm a little out of the demo on the Snap side of things. So it is a little different.
But not intellectually. Psychographically, you're in the demo.
Yes, that's true.
All right, well, if that's why they grow, what causes brands and businesses to die?
Either that shared narrative of going negative. We all agree that this is bad. We all agree that this is, not good in some way. Or a fraying of like two people can't agree on what something means. So then therefore it no longer bonds people together. There's no reason to buy it to signal anything because no one else knows what it means, regardless of the quality of the product.
Knowing that this next question, which brings us, I think, to number 7, has a million different answers based on a million different variables, I'll ask you to boil it down to perhaps one thing. Where's competitive advantage come from?
If we're going to stick on the brand portion of it, which I do believe it does, I guess the strength of the passion for that brand and shared narrative is a competitive advantage. When someone would give you the benefit of the doubt on a new product you roll out, you get your early adopters first because people want to try your products because you can't iterate and make the product better unless the earliest adopters try it. And give you that feedback. People think that product-led sales is just a very fun term in the tech world where the product, if it's great, will just drive the sales. Well, the product can't get great without your first users, right?
Yes.
Like the first sale still has to come through, whether it's enterprise sales in B2B, which I think is wildly underserved in B2B marketing and B2B CMOs, or online, which is what the social networks were very good at, or social media was very good at. Getting your first customers cheap. Those initial CAC, the initial cost per acquisition was very cheap. But you needed to do it. Otherwise, how do you get product feedback to begin with?
Right. Yeah, it's really interesting kind of thinking about the role in certain categories that those early buyers play in continued optimization and evolution. Now, oftentimes, they're playing it rather vocally, verbally, in a world where everybody can see it. Actually, so here's a reasonable segue. How do you measure for true incrementality?
I think that is hard. I mean, I guess you could try incrementality of reach could be, the number of mediums in which you can reach people with a message, an information-laden message, which is marketing and branding, right? Is getting thinner and thinner, right? There's, out of home still exists, right? And that's probably one of the strongest mediums.
Growing pretty quickly.
But it's hard to have audio with out of home. It's hard to deliver sight, sound, and motion with that. There is very few mediums where you reach people together. Like you reach people individually on their phone, but now you don't have shared experiences. There's no shared viewing, so I don't know what other people saw. I might reach them at different times. I'm on season 1 of Bridgerton, you're on season 3 of Bridgerton. Like the shared places to reach people has reduced. So if you can find those places, is why sports is so valuable. We're here at Cannes, and sports is everywhere. Sports beach, women's sports, like it is because it is one of the last few things that people experience together. So I do believe that there is some incrementality to that.
Say more about why you think, because I'm not seeing quite the thread to the incrementality there. I'm seeing the efficiency of scale.
Yeah, but I think the way in which you reach people matters. Like reaching someone on their own phone. Like, okay, people had always said to me, the Super Bowl reaches 100 million people, right? But it reaches them all at once.
210 last year.
Yeah.
Just,
100 million households.
Yeah. Okay.
So very good point. But so they say, oh, I can do that on Meta, or I can do that on Snap. But you're reaching them all individually on their own, where it's not a shared experience. And I think that there is something very, very different about the way in which that occurs. So more places where you reach people for again, back to shared experience is worth something different than just reaching people.
I understand. Okay, I got that now. All right, last 2 questions, and I'm pretty sure we're over time, but it's a loose 5. All right. If you just look across the landscape and you could wave a magic wand, right, and immediately address one C-suite misunderstanding, misconception about marketing or marketers, what would it be?
The lie of ROI. The lie of all marketing is measurable to some ROI standard that we can magically put into a feedback loop within the next day, week, month, year.
All right, I'm going to stick a pin in that because that's going to be at the center of where we go next. Okay. But I want to get the 10th question in. The relationship between a product and or a service and a brand is what?
The brand gives, again, permission for your earliest users. They actually invite people with an expectation of what they're about to try. With enough forgiveness, they'll give feedback and give you a chance to make the product better over time, versus discarding if they don't like it at first.
Yeah, for sure. I like the notion of it being a relationship that creates permission and manages expectation, and then of course creates and captures demand and desire. All right, let's go back to what you just talked about. I love the lie of ROI, and I know you have some very considered thoughts about it. In a world where CEOs and CFOs and boards are typically expert in the black and white of numbers, but not in the 50 shades of gray that really color human attitudes and behaviors and why people do and don't buy. What should a chief executive expect from ROI? What are the measures that matter? And what should they just stop pretending that they do simply because there's some correlation, even if no causation?
Yeah, it's interesting to phrase it that way, because I think a lot about what truly isn't possible and yet is reported that way, is in terms of, we spent this much more and this many more people bought the product. And what you have to believe that, which means we caused people to take action in the world which means we literally controlled people through our messaging, versus we delivered a message and it was layered upon thousands of other messages. And by the way, each human, one of my favorite stats, there's more neural connections in the brain than there are stars in the known galaxy, right? Yeah. And we think we understand how that brain works. We don't understand how AI is working right now, and it's not nearly as complicated as the human brain, right? So each brain is entirely unique. So the one ad does not work the same on any two people, right? And it is a culmination of a million variables down to the weather that day that drives someone as to whether or not they make a decision to pick up a product and buy it. But we reduce it to the simplest form of, okay, our numbers went up by this much when we added this much ad exposure. The comfort in the uncomfortable notion that you don't actually understand how the art works, and that you're building a tapestry and a narrative, and then that is also going to play with what's happening in politics in the world and the weather and someone's like family life is, there's just so much to it. So reasonable expectations for CEOs, I do think that generalized looking at NPS scores and some sort of market survey data, panel-based data, real human, like first-person narratives of why this should or shouldn't be working. Like marketing getting too much of the credit and too much of the blame is part of the problem, right? Right. And you can't fix one without fixing the other too. You can't have hero CMOs if you're going to have villain CMOs in the same way. I think that's a reasonable expectation over it. Also, a CMO managing to a budget, like the finance does get set and says, all right, here's what we have available for marketing. Like you should put as much as you possibly can reasonably put into marketing when you know you're investing in brand over time and you're investing in brand equity, because that will pay dividends. The question is on what time horizon. And like a CEO that can educate Wall Street and analysts and shareholders and boards as to that factor. I mean, obviously the most famous and overused one of all time is Steve Jobs. Was a marketer.
Brilliant marketer.
And look at the investment and what it did for Apple. Now, Apple makes amazing products, but it had to have permission. It didn't always make the best product. The first one wasn't always the best. The first watch wasn't the best. The first iPod wasn't the best, right? It was the iteration and the ability and passion of people who loved the brand that allowed it to become what it is as Apple.
The following segment features paid content from ROKT.
Doug, from ROKT's perspective, what's the C-suite need to better understand about relevance today?
For 30 years, marketers have been on this quest to have the right message put in front of the right customer at the right time. And what I've come to believe recently is that might not be right, or better yet, it might not be enough.
That's interesting, the distinction between it being right yet not being enough. Say more about that.
Yeah, we have this opportunity to go further, to be more relevant. Instead of right message, right customer, right time, make sure it's the best message to the best customer at the best time. This is where ROKT comes in, because we unlock the moment that matters most, when people are buying.
To learn more, go to ROKT, that's ROKT.com/Forbes. That's ROKT, ROKT.com/Forbes.
Now back to our program.
All right, so let's use Jobs as a jumping off point. One of the things he said famously in an interview that still pops up in my feed 2 or 3 times a year is that marketing is about values, which I think is very much consistent with your shared experience. Point
very much so.
For marketing to communicate anything, let alone values, presumably one first needs attention. You have a very equally informed point of view on attention metrics, and you and I have had conversations with our friend Pranav, who makes the point that 90% of decisions are made in the subconscious, and Pranav Yadav says, pay no attention to attention. You agree with him or no?
I mean, I don't know if he's saying it to be provocative.
He's not.
We've had the conversation
as a neuromarketer, I think he really believes.
But I mean, I guess that is an active attention. Is that how you're making your decision, or in passive? But the problem is, if you're making it in the subconscious is making it based on information it intook from somewhere, and it intook that information from past attention. Now, whether it was like you dedicated it or it was something that filtered into you, like without taking an input through sight, sound, or motion in some way, or touch, if I haven't taken in a story or a message or an experience of touching a hot stove, or I don't care what it is, you need inputs so the brain can process it all. The large language model between our ears is taking in stuff all the time, and that is producing outputs. And again, back to this, we don't know how it's coming out to some of those decisions. We don't know why we make some of the poor decisions we make, Like we don't know why we can't be more disciplined about getting up and going for a run in the morning.
I blame my parents.
It's
usually their fault.
It's a default. It's a good default.
Yeah.
But same thing. Like now, we've gone into much more mundane things about why we picked up this or that, or had dessert or didn't have dessert. Like whether or not we're making an active decision, or it was the culmination of a lot of inputs earlier in our lives, and like that inputs, I mean, we both agree, a baby isn't born racist, right? Like you're not born bigoted or chauvinist. Like you grow up and you experience these things, and it's not because you directed attention to it. You didn't have to read a book on this to become it, but a million different things happened in your life. Now maybe all those things came together, mashed up, and in your subconscious you make decisions, but they are all a product of what you've taken in through. Now, I guess if you want to say attention broader is all sensory inputs without having to be directed attention, fine, I'll take that. Yeah. But I would take that you would find many more people who read a book or a child who saw a movie on space exploration and wanted to become an astronaut later, and it was because of the attention they paid to the movie, right? Or the book that they read, or the teacher that was amazing. How is that not?
It's really interesting. While this episode will release after we have left Ken, I was just with Gary Vee and a few folks, and Deepak Chopra spoke, and one of the points he made is that most of human behavior is driven by memory, which is completely compatible with what 100%. You've been saying.
Yes.
And it actually raises the question, what's the relationship in the chicken and in the egg between memory and attention? And it might be chicken, egg, chicken, egg, chicken.
Or chicken, it's chicken, egg, chicken omelet. Yeah. Because the omelet part is we don't have perfect memories. We don't actually access memories. We recreate them in our brain. And we recreate them in different ways than they were. Or like we remember something more fondly or harsher than we should. So, but still, the ingredients of how we made that memory, it came from somewhere, right?
That's absolutely right. And in fact, I just published a story that used the illustration. I think it's the behavioral principle iceberg, right? So typical iceberg, X is above the water, X times 3 is below the water. What can we see, right? At the tip of this behavioral iceberg, it's purchase, and I'm gonna mess it up. I'll correct it in the show notes. It's like it's purchase intent above the water. Then it's everything from emotion, memory, conscious, subconscious, this attitudes, beliefs, behaviors, things that actually make up culture below the water. And we can only measure what we see above the water, but everything that impacts.
Yes.
Sticking with attention for a second.
Yes.
Everything in the world is competing for everybody's attention.
Yes.
When we tend to frame our frame the work we do as marketers in the context of a competitive set, but as relates to people's attention, the competitive set is everything. How long ago were you running ad sales at Fox?
2015 to 2019. So 5 years.
You created the 6-second spot, right?
I mean, I literally, it was 1 year here at Cannes. I just heard Google was going to have 6-second ads on YouTube. I'm like, sure, can we have shorter ads on TV too? I think that'd be great. Like the length should not matter. It should be the delivery.
The story.
By the way, podcasts need shorter ad formats, but we'll come back to that.
Yeah. Note for our team here. Talk about your perspectives on, and again, thinking about what a chief executive who isn't trained in marketing ought to know about people's attentions.
I mean, like the big broad base, and I guess this would be the counter to pay no attention to attention, is that everything is the attention economy. Like everything is seeking attention. If you look at the world's most valuable companies, they mine the 3 most valuable things in the world: oil, compute, NVIDIA and others, and attention. Google, Meta, etc. And they mine those things and they refine them into something. They refine them into purchase.
Sorry, this is not just a detail interruption, but Apple is, I don't know where the market's closed, but Apple recently regained its place as the world's most valuable company. Where are they in that mix?
I mean, have you watched people just stare into their phone continuously? Or the Vision Pro is supposed to have people's rapt attention constantly, or a watch on your arm that can send you notifications when they want, access to people's brains, access to them, right? Like they're a services company as much as they're a hardware company right now, right? And this is the point. It's like either people focus on that, and I guess you could add to the fact that they're a brand, right? But I think anything that is seeking. Now, what I would say is, and this is, I think it's both a Jobs line and a Tim Cook line now more, which is, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product.
Yeah.
This is, Apple gets consumers to pay for the thing that they want to pay attention to. The other two are saying, we're going to give you the thing for free to get your attention, right? And data and information about you so that we can then, by the way, serve your attention other places. But I think that going back to what I think is so valuable to anyone, not just CEOs, I think anybody knowing that we all live in this attention economy, like your family, how much time you spend with your parents and how much time you talk to your loved ones, how much time you spend with your colleagues. We all know that this work remote and mixed in office, out of office became harder and harder coming back from COVID because the people who were just there to have random conversations would spur ideas and then they'd get promoted, and then it became harder to balance those things because the more you have someone's attention, the more chance there is for serendipity and growth and ideation. And so I think realizing that we're all in that attention battle, I don't have kids, but I'm assuming every now and then when you're with your children, there's a phone in their hand and you want to talk to them, or they don't want to
every now and then.
But I think when you think about it personally, professionally, and up to the office of the CEO, that this is the game that everybody is in. Then I think you have a slightly different lens, not just on marketing, but how you operate.
Yeah, I think in fact that it is that operational consideration that you mentioned at the end that then informs how you market, right? I remember when I was CMO of Live Nation, when I got there, I was interviewed by a trade publication. What do I see as the biggest challenge? And I was like, I just want to be clear. And this is 2010. For the hot minute I was there, and I said, our competition is not AEG. It's not the other show playing that night. It's out to dinner with your friends. It's staying home with your family. It's watching television. It's playing PlayStation. Yeah. And the competitive set is just it's
endless.
Endless.
And you just want to be the best thing for it. And I think the remembering that you don't just market to your consumers. You market to your employees.
And your employees also market to your consumers.
Would you not care that your employees think the same thing about your brand that you would want customers to think? Would you not love for your employees to spend more time thinking about how they could better contribute, right? Without being mandated and asking people to overwork. You market to investors, you market to shareholders. So you market to these different constituents rather than just saying your CMO just markets to consumers.
I couldn't agree more, and it is one of my great frustrations with chief executives, speaking broadly, is that they don't understand that, and they don't understand that the bi and trifurcation of a marketer's responsibilities, which include ensuring everybody internally is aligned so that they can communicate it naturally, comfortably, conversationally, externally, whether or not they're on the proverbial front lines, is just lost. And as marketing has moved from a really centralized kind of ivory tower function to a wildly decentralized function, where the gate agent at my delayed flight can make or break a brand's reputation, is oftentimes not understood. And it goes back to your point, the marketer is often blamed for the chief marketer, what isn't their fault. That said, in this attention landscape, or maybe this absence of attention landscape, I want to tie it back to something you said earlier about culture being on sale, and something I've heard you say elsewhere, which is that power is now going to the curators, right? And is it the curators who will earn and therefore drive our attention because they are saving us the time? What's your talk more about that?
Yes, I mean, I think that, and even more so. So prior to this generative AI, obviously AI has been around for a while, delivering us our ads forever. There are Google search results. There are the TikTok algorithm. AI has been deciding what goes into our brains for a while, and that's concerning in its own right. Moving on, generative AI is going to create so much content that we don't know what to watch anymore. We don't know what's true or what's not. We don't know what everyone else is seeing. And so the role of the curator is coming back in a huge way.
And when you talk about the role of the curator coming back, is that different than the algorithmic curator?
Very much so, I think. I mean, again, this is a bit of a thesis on a go-forward basis. But, we're out here at Cannes. I would say a success story to watch over the next few years is look at Yahoo. Right, Yahoo was the front page to the internet. Right, it was a curation of wonderful things. It was the internet in the days of what the internet was supposed to become, before the newsfeed and the algorithm and tech. Now we're back to a place where I'm like, okay, the internet's infinite again. Can someone curate down what Wirecutter? Right, here's stuff. Here's things to buy. Wirecutter is a brand, but the brand.
We like to refer to it as vetted at Forbes. But your point is well taken.
Yeah, but I think the importance, right, when you think about Forbes or anyone else, is object permanence of the curator. I do not blame Amazon. So object permanence is, I still remember learning this concept of when you're a child, if I cover up this thing on the desk, you don't, it's gone, where'd it go? Oh, there it is.
Right.
I know that's still there. Object permanence is this idea in the mind that even though I don't see it, or it's, so when I buy a product on Amazon and it comes and it could be a junk product, not all, there's a lot of great products. I just want to be very, very clear here as to what I'm pointing out, which is I don't blame Amazon. That seller was bad. Okay, I'm going to move on. Because Amazon is not a retailer. Amazon is a marketplace. Retailers were supposed to, just like Walmart famously said, we're going to get the best quality products for the best possible price for our customers. We're going to do everything we can to drive efficiencies in supply chain. They're going to have a great experience, and we're going to curate the world of available products to them. And so the retailers, it is a brand. You would argue that most retailers that are good are brands in their own right?
Absolutely.
And it's kind of funny because you think about it, the famous one we keep talking about, Apple, has moved into being a retailer, right? Their retail stores are both extensions of their brand experience and a way for them to engage with their consumers more often, expand what they do. So.
And that's just on the physical side. Of course, there's the digital side.
But they're the ultimate retailer, and their ecosystem is, okay, well, this is exactly what's in our ecosystem, right? And so as you go forward into the age of AI, both in information and travel, and pick the category, the whole internet is built on top of search as top of funnel. Okay, then we're gonna have some links. We're gonna pay people. Then we're gonna send you to aggregators, the TripAdvisor, Expedia, Booking. Someone's gonna buy something. And then it's gonna. That is reversing into, where should I go on a trip? Do I want to ask ChatGPT? Do I trust ChatGPT to answer that question? Or would I trust Condé Nast AI to tell me the answer to that question? Because I know editors. I want to know the news of the day from business. Do I trust ChatGPT to tell me the biggest CEOs and the best CMOs, or would I trust Forbes to answer that question for me? Because there's object permanence to the publication that's a layer over the top that is taking responsibility for editorial. If it gets it wrong, I will then hold it against Forbes and move on to someone else. If the product I get has lead in it from XYZ retailer, that retailer is now to account for me, not some random seller in an open marketplace.
Right. If we then move back to the beginning of the question, which is what you said earlier about culture being on sale.
Yes.
As we get towards the end of this conversation, explain what that means to the audience.
Culture is these moments of shared narrative. So I give the example often of the NFL, right, is a cultural touchstone moment. And the sponsors and the advertisers at the NFL would say, hey, we want a particular share of voice in the NFL. I'm going back to my days in the television side of the world, being specific. And then they would pay for it in commercials, right? 30-second spots. And we all know we saw way too many of the same commercial.
That was the value exchange.
But that was that's how, and remember, that's the value exchange between us, the person airing
B2B,
the NFL.
yeah.
That was not a fair value exchange to the consumer. And it would have been just
Which
as
is
valuable.
why increasingly they aren't paying attention to it.
I always say that attention is the world's most valuable resource. Mining attention is what these companies are in the business of. Television strip mined attention. Strip mining, it means because you leave nothing, right? It just destroys the ecosystem in which you're doing it until people opt out and go someplace else.
Right.
Which particularly ironic because the upfronts are back. And Amazon is in the upfronts and Netflix is in the upfronts. You know that Amazon and Netflix are selling in the upfronts the NFL and Shonda Rhimes shows. You know what they were selling 10 years ago in television in the upfronts? The NFL and Shonda Rhimes shows. Because cultural touchstone moments are what's rare. When you look at a calendar of the year, you don't, when are movies going to launch? When's the car
Is it
coming out?
rare at scale? Which is say subcultural touchstone moments happen all the time.
It's rare at scale and with predictability in particular.
Yeah. That
Suits going viral doesn't really help a lot if you're just filling it with CPMs, right? Yeah. The reason upfronts existed was because we said, okay, here's what's going to happen. And sports is one of the last places where you have that. And so when I say culture is on sale, I've said this many times, but the two richest people on planet Earth recently were Bernard Arnault and Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos is your margin is my opportunity. Right. Famously, everything that relies on the platforms completely over time will have their margins compressed to zero or near. Bernard Arnault has the highest margin products on planet Earth. Yeah. That is a CEO who can think in 5 and 10 year and generational increments, which means he can buy something that is worth way more than the market gives it credit for, or it can be monetized for today because you can invest in it and build over time. And that is what I mean by culture is on sale. Sponsorship of important moments is on sale because so much money has flowed out of brand marketing and sponsorship and flowed into performance marketing and lower funnel and everything that might get an ROI tomorrow and retail media. And just by fact of it's like the law of thermodynamics, there's only so many dollars in the market. If you have 70% of it rushing to lower funnel, that means all of these moments where you are adjacent to culture or you have a place where you can do storytelling and things you want to be next to, but you won't know if it worked for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. By the way, it might not work because your product might not be good. You might have priced it wrong. It might, catch on fire. Like your competitor might start giving things away for free. The idea that you could guarantee an ROI just because you picked the right cultural moment to be next to that's the fallacy. That's the ROI fallacy. But now, because there's not as many dollars competing over those moments, they're cheap. They really are inexpensive. The question is, do you have CEOs who have enough, and CMOs, who have enough leeway to say, I can overinvest in these things because I know that they'll work over time, right? And I will build something. And again, remember, imagine you get the brave CEO and the brave CMO and you have all this stuff, but then the product doesn't quite fit, or there's a change in technology. Again, this is back to you can't control for all of these things.
Yeah, to the contrary, I think, and I think I'm quite taken as we get to the end by your point about, because at least it had never occurred to me as obvious as I think it is in retrospect. Your point about the predictability and oftentimes the absence of predictability about those shared moments, right? I was just in conversation with Tim Ellis the other day for the CMO of the NFL, and he made a point that 93 of the top 100 shows on television last year were NFL games.
Yes.
93 out of 100. Yep. So a last question for you, and thank you so much for being with us. You get to, in this moment, what do you want to say to the world's largest CEOs and their CFO colleagues about what they should expect from the best marketers in their organization? What is a reasonable expectation and what's an unreasonable one?
I said tongue-in-cheek, I was talking to a group of investors in the agency world, and I think everyone's investing on the wrong metrics, impressions, and some of this performance media. And I used to try to convince the world they should do it differently, because honestly, there's so much opportunity. If everyone did it differently, we'd be supporting great content. We'd be supporting brands that matters as curators, which is what people really want. I will say that now in my role as the co-CEO of Comos and a brand product group, I kind of hope everyone keeps doing it the same way so I can keep beating the market, because things are cheap for me right now.
Right.
Like, I mean, I look for, my partner, my business partner in that venture, Richard Betts, is one of the world's greatest at what he does, right? Master craftsman, former master sommelier, passed on his first test, first person to ever quit the Quarter Master Sommeliers. And I shook his hand one day and I said, I understand it implicitly how to get things in front of people one time, but I can't sell it twice, right?
Well, that's one of the hardest things in the world.
And so,
But that goes back to product, of course.
But that goes back to product, and that's what we said. People have asked, how do you have one of the fastest growing, if not the fastest growing, ultra luxury tequila in the world? Who's your celebrity? And we're like, we have no celebrity. The liquid is the celebrity, number one. Bottle can be number two, but only because it tells you what the liquid is inside of it. And if you don't care about the craft, if when you scratch at the surface of a luxury brand and there's nothing underneath it, it's no longer luxury, right? You get one time.
Yeah.
So that is a tongue-in-cheek answer to, I hope our competitors don't do anything different and keep doing it the same.
Right, but go back to, what does the CEO need to know? Not you as CEO, but the other CEOs about, if measuring for impressions is wrong, what should they expect from their brilliant chief marketers?
I think they should expect an understanding of the story that they want to tell about the brand that everyone agrees upon internally at the C-suite level down. This is the story of our brand. This is how it's going to reach people across mediums. Impressions don't matter as much as attention. Well, because impressions are binary. They're measured very differently. Obviously, I did an investment and led it in Adelaide, which is an attention measurement company, because likelihood and opportunity to tell a story is what your media should do. Your messaging is which story you're going to tell once you have that opportunity.
Right.
And then that's the alchemy that marketing has. That's literally all the tools in their tool set. It really does come
down to, what are we going to say to whom, when, where, and how that gives the most likelihood to purchase.
And you have to pull out of the spreadsheet, because spreadsheets lie. The numbers lie. I prefer, people are shocked that I like panel data better than census data, because census data is just wrought with fraud, whereas panel data can be inaccurate but directionally correct.
Yeah,
right?
we're hearing a very similar perspective from some of the other guests we've had on the show, and I think that that's one of the commonalities that our audience should heed. But I want to give your words the last words, which is spreadsheets lie. Joe, thanks so much for being with us, man.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for listening. Today's show has been brought to you by ROKT, and you can find the CEO's Guide to Marketing wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to juice that algorithm, smash that subscribe button, and leave us a review so others can find us too. We'll see you next time.